mother. Wyatt gave me a lifesaver in Bible study this morning, and you know the joke is the preacher puts a lifesaver in his mouth so that when it's gone, the sermon's over, and we're all at lunch on time. And I ate the lifesaver already, so I hope we don't run long. Before we start, I want to read the text today early because, I've been talking about the rhythms of life. Here we go. This is if I made a CD of this, I would have this sound on it. Maybe not without my coonskin cap over it. The rhythms of life. If you've been here each week, some of these items up here make sense to you. Some of them I haven't preached about yet, but these are all about the sermon, this sermon series this summer. The series of the Psalms, preaching about the rhythms of our life. Now, how are you going to preach a series on Psalms if you don't preach the 23rd Psalm, right? Maybe not the first one I would have picked, but we're gonna talk about the 23rd Psalm today. So, since it's so familiar, let's all read it together. Shall we do that? Before the sermon starts, let's read the text together. Read with me aloud. Here we go. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for His name's sake. And even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Leave that up just a minute. Isn't it? So I don't know if we understand. You anoint my head with oil. There's a lot, the rod and the staff. There's a lot of word pictures in here that escape us because we don't live in David's culture. But I think that one at the top, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Boy, doesn't everybody in here understand that? Don't you get that? When things in life are nipping at you, isn't it just a great thought that, boy, one of these days you'll all see me on top and God will be saying, that one right there is my favorite one. Right there, a table in the presence of everything that's trying to kick my butt right now. Who wouldn't want that? Well, that's not today's sermon, but wasn't that fun to get started? Wasn't that fun to get started, huh? All right. This week, we had a birthday this last week for Cheyenne. Come up here, big girl. Come up here and see your granddaddy. She's 1 year old now. Can you wave at everybody? Wave. Say thank you. She's a year old. There you go. Clap. Yay. She'll join you in that. Some of you came to the birthday party. Last Sunday I told you already know this. She's our community child here. Shannon and I are bringing her up at home, and you're helping us here. And so it is that you came to her party and brought the coolest gifts, Not that we wanted you to bring gifts, that's why you were invited, but you brought really cool things for her. And she's learning. But one of the things we got this week was a bed. She got her first baby bed this week. She had a crib, don't get me wrong, which I don't know how she wormed her way out of that crib, but as of last December, she's been sleeping right in the bed between me and Shannon. And usually not parallel to us, but perpendicular, if you know what that means. That means that she has her face in one of us and her feet in the other one. And that's how we spread out on the bed every night. And it's been very difficult for me to remain healthy and positive in attitude through these many months because I don't get a full night's sleep. So this week we put her in her own little bed. And oh gosh, it's heartbreaking. One of the reasons I don't sleep at night is not just because she wakes me up, it's because I wake up and I lay there stroking her and staring at her and just feeling all good and lovey, and I don't want to go to sleep. I don't want to miss a minute of that, But got to give it up. Got to let her have her own little bed. Well, along with the first year of life comes a lot of stages that she has to grow through. So one of the things I want to do is, she's been a part of our sermons and a part of our worship every week, and you haven't seen the last of her, but we're going to take her to the nursery this morning. And we wanted you all to play along. We wanted everybody to be a part of this. So you better go with me, because if she's going to have a problem, you're going to be there. Here you go, Mama. Nana, Mama, Nana. Yeah. Y'all hang out, and I hope you'll hear me. I'll keep talking to you. And don't talk amongst yourselves, but pray for me and pray for Cheyenne. And so here we go, baby. I hope, when you get to come back, you'll be bored with my... I have someone new today. We have a little Cheyenne. Now, Shannon, you might want to hang out in case she cries a little bit. Shannon will hang out, and then she can sneak off if everything's cool, okay? Y'all good? All right, help her out. If there's a problem, y'all come back. Come get her. All right. Whew, that's done. I didn't really look forward to that either, because now I put the pressure on us, and she has to go to the nursery every week. That's not good. I remember the first day that I took Heather to school. I started raising Heather by myself when she was about 2 or 3 years old. And single dad, had a job, needed some help with daycare, and she got the right age to start Head Start. The Head Start program. It's a great thing. All my kids went to Head Start school. And so I took Heather over to, I think it was Locust. It was one of the schools over on the north side. That might not be Locust. We took her over there. I took her over there in the morning, and I pulled up to the curb, and I thought, I'll take her in. And little Heather, y'all know her now. She's 29 now and just as independent now as she was then. Little Heather said, "Oh, Dad, it'll be all right. I got this." And she bounced right out of the van, and she walked up the sidewalk and turned the corner to go inside the building. And I sat in the van waiting until she's inside the door, And as soon as she stepped up on the porch, just before she pulled the door to go in, she looked back. She waved at me. And I'm sitting there just bawling my eyes out, going, "Oh, God." "It's okay, Dad. I got this." And so she went in, and I drove off for the first morning in her little life without her. I've never forgotten that. That picture of her walking away from me down the sidewalk, it became a picture of our life together. It was a journey raising children, to see them every day moving a little further away, standing on their own legs. And it leaves me feeling really alone and lonely. Some people call it empty nest syndrome when the kids grow up and leave home. It leaves us feeling alone. We do some funny things when we feel alone. Loneliness drives us to some silly things like working endless hours, or repeating bad marriages over and over again. Loneliness causes us to act in a very strange way because we are not comfortable with our aloneness. We are not comfortable in our aloneness. Richard Foster calls solitude one of the disciplines, one of the inward disciplines, I think he lists it as. Or maybe it's an outward, I can't remember, but Richard Foster lists it as one of the spiritual disciplines, something that is to be embraced and something that is to be intentionally installed and practiced in your life. That's not one that we're good at. We talk about church as community, and we gather as community to support one another, but we are not comfortable in our aloneness. It has become too lonely, and solitude as a discipline escapes us. In his book called The Beloved, Henry Nouwen talks about our intentionality in avoiding solitude. He says that we have forgotten that in the solitude, in our moments alone with God, that we are there to accept God's statement over us. And that's not a statement of judgment. In our aloneness, God does not stand ready to say to us, "Did you know that you're a sinner? Did you know that you have disappointed me? Did you know that you have failed?" to be what I have created you to be, perhaps, or to live up to a standard. I don't know how you look at it, but in those moments of solitude, God does not stand ready to pronounce judgment over us and the things that other people have said to us, and sometimes the things that we have bought into and believed ourselves. God simply comes to us in that solitude, in that moment of our aloneness, to say that you are my perfect creature. You are my child. You are the one I adore and I have loved. My beloved sons and daughters, all of you. Wow. Wow. Why would we run from that moment if God stands simply to say to us in our aloneness that we are accepted? Jesus knew the psalmists. Jesus knew that we struggle with aloneness. The reason this psalm is written is because we struggle with being alone. When I walk into that valley, God walks with me. How I must have been saying that when I drove away from the school that morning. How I made myself think that as I walked down the hall today to carry Cheyenne to the nursery for the first time. And how you do it too. When you are feeling terribly alone and abandoned and you must face something without someone with you, even if people are around you, you know, there are things that come your way that no one can calm your fears over. So even with people around your bedside or surrounding you in your moment of anxiety, you still stand alone before God and say over and over, I'm not alone, I'm not alone. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you walk with me. I know you're with me. Say something, God. I know you're with me. Make a little noise, God. I know you're here. I know you're with me. I'm never alone. Oh, I'll bet you're going to make a table for me in front of my enemies at the end of this. Just say something, God. Come on. I need to know you're here. I need to know you're here. Do you hear the psalmist crying that over and over? I need to know you're here. Don't you feel that way? Isn't that a rhythm of your life? That things happen, even if you want it to happen sometimes, it brings with it a little tinge of anxiety, a little something you didn't want. You know, I'm wanting a full night's sleep, but to give up those tender moments with the baby, I'll put her in that little bed and I'll blink my eyes and she'll be 16 years old and these things will never happen again. God, I know you're here. I know you're with me. I'm not alone. Jesus, sensing this rhythm of life, says to us in Matthew's gospel, I'm with you always. Always. To the end of the age, the very end of the age, I'm with you. In John's gospel, he suggests that he leaves behind him a spirit that is a constant companion, a comforter, and a counselor to us. Never alone. In Luke's gospel, I like it probably the best when Jesus says, I am among you as one who serves. Wherever there is servanthood, there is the presence of Christ. There is the presence of God, and there is mercy. There is companionship. There is comfort. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the last week or so, a gunman who was associated with the Islamic community in Chattanooga went into a recruiting office, as you all know from the news, and killed 4 people. I think maybe a 5th has even died now. Yeah. And no one really knows why. Chattanooga is a community that has prided itself for decades now on being a very interfaith-oriented community. There's a very good relationship and lots of open communication between different religions, the Jewish temple, Christian churches, and the Muslim mosque in Chattanooga. While neighboring states worked hard and voted hard to keep mosques out of their neighborhoods, Chattanooga blessed and embraced the building of a mosque. People of several different faiths, including the Christian faith, attended the grand opening. There are many meetings in that community where people of different faiths come together outside their houses of worship to discuss and talk about the climate in which they all live and how they can all coexist with one another. And in this week that has gone by, Islamic leaders as well as Christian leaders and Jewish leaders have come again to the table and in front of the media to speak out. You might think of it as damage control, but they're speaking out in terms of suffering and compassion. They're saying that we are all suffering here, that there is not one who suffers alone. For some in the Islamic community, they're already fearing and experiencing what happens in these cases, that perhaps other people are looking at them now as if they are potential murderers or bombers because they belong to one particular group and not the other. But they want their voice heard clearly in Chattanooga. We do not condone what this man has done, and we suffer. We have lost along with you. And the Christian community is speaking out and saying to those leaders, you are not alone. We are together, serving one God in one Spirit and suffering one judgment in this together. You know, folks, we are the reflection of God. Created in that image that makes each one of us a reflection of God here on this earth. We are the image of God on the earth, each one of us. And along with being created in that image and being a reflection of what it is to be God and what God is like, we are also the presence of God. We represent the Spirit that God brings into this creation, to our community and to the earth. The question is, what Spirit do we bring? What spirit do we bring? For some, there is so much fear. I'll say it again. I believe that the reason Muhammad called Christians infidels is because the Christians that Muhammad encountered were being unfaithful to the nonviolent and forgiving teachings of Jesus Christ. We represent that presence of Christ. We are. If by saying we're the presence of God and we are the Spirit of God and imaging God to the world, we say so because we are Christian and we are the presence of Christ. We are that Spirit of Jesus Christ that has been left to us, and we represent that in the earth. That is how we know God as Christians, and that is how we represent God. And Jesus calls us to bring the Spirit of God into the world in a spirit of compassion, a spirit of forgiveness, and a spirit of fearlessness. Are you listening? How could we be Christian if we did not image God for the world in the way that Jesus calls upon us to? If we image God in another way in the world, then God is that in the world. If we bring the image of God out in judgment and constantly criticizing and excluding one group or another group because they make us nervous, then we are bringing the presence of a judgmental, narrow, neurotic God into the world. And that God is created in our image, not we created in the image of that God. The God who has created us and empowered us through the very Spirit of Christ to be the presence in the world that the world needs is an inclusive presence. One that is built on forgiveness. Forgive others as God forgives you. Do not grieve the spirit of forgiveness, we hear Jesus say. As we follow Jesus into the world where people are afraid of being alone, and where people fear each other's groups, and where people are so afraid that they choose often radical acts to impress upon others, we should remember some basic things. Jesus never made God distant to anyone. And so it is that we are that very presence of God sent into a dark world to say to the world, the kingdom of God is here, now, not just close at hand, but among you. And we should be taking this message to the world, emulating our Master. Consider these two things today as our message as Christians to the world. First of all, don't be afraid. Fear is a big thing. There's a lot of ignorance in the world, and fear and ignorance together. And I'm not calling people ignorant. That's not a funny statement. That's a true statement. And fear and ignorance together is a dangerous thing. That's why I don't honk at people in traffic. They don't know the rules of the road already, and they've done something to threaten me. Don't honk at them. Man, you might shake them up and cause a real bad accident. Horns are for saying howdy. We should be constantly reminding people, do not be afraid, because our Master Jesus has said, don't be afraid. Fear is the biggest thing that's crippling you today. The second one is this: the kingdom of God is here. And if anyone asks you, Christian, how you know that that statement is true, you tell them very simple: because I am here. And I am the kingdom of God here today among you. That, I think, is how we answer this rhythm of loneliness as we go into the world. Will you pray with me?